listening to Richard from Aston Re talking about the enterprise PMO journey that they've been on, and also from Guy Jelly from PMO. I've just had a really good sneak preview. All I can say to you is get your pens and paper ready for lots of note taking. It is looking really excellent. So, enjoy it. I'm going to hand you to Guy right now. Hi, Guy.
How are you, Lindsay?
Hello, hi. You ready to go?
Hi there. My name is Oludaldu.
Lindsay, can you hear me?
Can.
Okay. There's a lot of background noise. I know there's a lot of people joining. I can see them all joining up. And yes, thank you, Steve. For those of you joining on the WebEx, if you can just mute yourself, there is a global mute, but as soon as we do that, Lindsay, Richard, and myself are all going to be muted as well, which is going to be lots of fun. So as you join, if you can just mute yourself, I know my team is also muted in the background. So ready to get going. I see people are still joining, and it normally happens that they take a couple of minutes into the session. So the first 2 or 3 minutes are always fairly disruptive. So for those of you that did join earlier and are here already, thank you very much. Richard, if you can move on. So really what today's webinar is about is handing over to Richard, who's going to cover most of the webinar actually. I'll do 1 or 2 slides, but Richard will do most of it in the background. Just my background very quickly. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of PPO. I've been doing project portfolio management for probably 17 years now or something like that. Helped a lot of organizations. There's a lot of noise in the background here.
There we go now.
Sorry guys, I can see a lot of people joining on the telephones, and I think that's causing the background noise. So if everyone can just mute yourself, please. There is a button on the webinar. You'll see it. You'll see it on the bottom left-hand corner. There's a mute button. If people can just mute there. Okay, sounds a bit better. So thank you very much, Lindsay, for the kickoff and the introduction. My name is Guy Jelly. I'm the co-founder and CEO of PPO. I've been helping organizations for the last couple of years, or 15 years now, more than 15 years, with their project portfolio management, establishing their PMOs. So really what today is about is all about Richard and his journey at Aspen. So brief introduction to Richard. He's the portfolio director and head of the EPMO at Aspen. He's been in financial services across retail, banking, investment banking, insurances for over 30 years. And he's done over 23 years of project and change management in the City of London. He's been involved in a number of extensive PMOs and projects over the years. He joined Aspen in September 2015 to build an enterprise project management office. And Richard has been very giving of his time and his energy to assist us today in taking us through the journey that he's gone from having what he calls an analog PMO to a digital PMO. Before I hand over to Richard, I just want to ask, from a housekeeping point of view, I know there's a lot of people writing on the chat here. Thank you very much. Keep the questions coming as and how they pop up. You can use the chat functionality that the webinar software has. My team will pick it up and we'll feed it through to Richard at the end. For those of you that are battling with the sound, there's a sound button at the bottom of the webinar. You can click on that and listen to sound on your PC, or you can dial in a number either in the UK or South Africa, wherever you're dialing in from. But can I also ask that everybody mute themselves, because as people are joining this for whatever reason, there is creating a significant amount of background noise, which is going to be quite difficult to Richard to deal with. So I'm going to hand over to Richard. It's 5 minutes past the hour. Richard's going to present his journey. I'll bits and pieces as required, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. But if there are questions, please send them in the chat. Pop them over on the chat functionality. You can talk to each other on the chat. You can talk to my team on the chat. And as Richard takes us through the rest of the presentation, we'll pick up those questions and we'll answer as many of them as we can at the end. And if we run out at the end, we'll send you some written feedback on that. Everybody attending the webinar today will receive a copy of this. If for whatever reason you're having technical problems or you can't hear the voice or you need to get dragged out into some sort of meeting or something, we will share the recording and the presentations with you after today's webinar as well. So thank you everybody for joining. I see a huge amount of people on this call that I know personally, existing clients, people I know in the project portfolio management space. So Lindsay and the team from Flashmob, thank you for everything you've done. Richard and your team at Aspen, thank you for everything you've done. And Richard, I'll hand over to you now to take us through your PMO digitalization journey.
Thanks, Guy, and thanks also for the introduction, Lindsay. And thanks to everyone for sparing your time, valuable time this morning, and taking an interest in the Aspen PMO story and how by digitising our PMO function, we've reclaimed our resources.
I think I might just listen to them.
So let me just start by providing some background on Aspen as a whole.
I'm going to get a recording of this, so I won't listen to it now. I'll just listen to it later when you're asleep or whatever.
Hi, could we just remind everyone to mute? It's very difficult to talk over. Thank you. So Aspen is a specialty insurer and reinsurance company. We've a London market focus with a broad range of risks under coverage. We were formed in 2002. Company's growing quite rapidly. We now have major hubs in London, New York, Bermuda, as well as offices across Europe, the Middle East, North and Latin America. You can see a little about our service offering via the aspen.co website. So first, let's provide you with some context for today's presentation. The EPMO function at Aspen has grown over the last 4 years from a single-person IT-focused project office to its current structure. We still have a relatively small team of 4 people, with 2 excellent PMO analysts in Isabel and Josh, alongside myself in the core PMO team. We have a delivery PMO support capability. The team size for that varies according to the shape of our portfolio at any one time. But having had some major programs come to a conclusion recently, this has just reduced to just the one senior PMO analyst, Jo. But it's Jo's birthday today, so I promised to give her a shout out, so happy birthday to you, Jo. So within the PMO, we manage a formal change portfolio, which averages in the region of $25 to $30 million of new spend on an annual basis. We have an active project population around about 50 at any one time. We provide support and services across the portfolio program and project life cycles, or I like to say, thought to finish. This enables the transformation efforts of our business. We currently sit within the BT function with reporting lines into the COO and CIO. So whereabouts did our journey begin? Well, building on the work the company had put in place over a number of years within the IT project office, we recognised the need to mature the service to provide a greater range of value add to our business. So based on an initial capability review, a gap analysis and an informal maturity assessment, we identified some pockets of really good practice with, for example, a very strong set of artifacts, 6 very detailed project methodologies covering a wide variety of approaches, although with a relatively low level of maturity in PMO processes, data management, assurance, organisational governance and change management. The key findings of our review were that the PMO services were very much built in a modular style. The elements were produced in isolation and not really looked at as an integrated end-to-end service offering. Our project managers were working inconsistently from each other and they were not following the detailed methodologies. There were differing data standards between projects, an inconsistent reporting heartbeat with some projects reporting weekly, others monthly, others both, and several only really ever under duress by the PMO. There was limited trust from the delivery community in the PMO data set. Projects often had a parallel book, which led to inconsistencies in data being reported to different stakeholders at different points in the month. Failing PPM tool implementation. There was a number of contributing factors, but critically what appeared to be really an over-ambitious scope, a lack of change management activity, and an aim to fundamentally drive up the maturity via implementing a PPM toolset. First and possibly bravest decision around about that time was to terminate the tool implementation. Whilst this cost us some money at that time, we needed to take an integrated view of how we would enable the organisation, and just felt at that time we would have cornered ourselves by pressing on and automating what were probably suboptimal processes. It did, however, give us a great baseline to work from. So what was that analogue journey like? The principal aim was to move the EPMO from an administrative and support model into a services-based model. The new model was developed iteratively with a plan to progressively introduce new services and enhance our existing capabilities. First thing we really needed to do was provide a consistent and stable data set for management reporting, and then a standard frequency and format for our reporting outputs. So what did we do and how did we do that? Well, we set a series of lines of action into motion. We introduced a standardized status report and a reporting heartbeat. This provided us with a common format for incoming reports. We reduced our reporting heartbeat back from a weekly basis to monthly to help focus on getting better quality input from our teams. And it also, this had a major benefit, and it reduced the data collection and collation burden on the PMO and allowed us to add an element of analysis and summary commentary. We did this by creating a single project list or data sheet in Excel. This acted as a single source of the truth. It contained key project data in a data sheet format, including all of our financial inputs. This allowed us to create simple but consistent pivot and chart-based reporting across the portfolio. We created a centralized view of our resource and supply and demand. Again, this was in Excel. We created another data sheet with a common resource pool with all of our resources in there, whether they be IT, the business transformation, or our key business subject matter experts. We also sourced a demand view of resources from every project, and again ran pivot-based chart and table reports, which enabled us to provide views of demand and supply by team, by line manager, by skill type, by location, etc. We introduced timesheets and an internal cost recoveries model, which enabled us to fairly charge back all internal resources to projects based on an actual time approved by the project managers, rather than on a high-level allocation, as well as being able to segregate the non-chargeable project time, such as holidays, training, BAU, etc. We started to include key milestones into our status reporting. This enabled us for the first time to create an integrated portfolio plan or a roadmap showing where all of our projects were within the life cycle, when they would complete, and the key milestones on their journey, such as the phase ends and release dates. We maintained this in a central MSP plan with a variety of pre-configured reviews, again, for our reports. The multiple methods were simplified into a single flexible project delivery framework. We created a simple portfolio and project governance framework with the key decision points, controls, and supporting artifacts at phase transitions. This provided freedom for the project teams to deliver the projects appropriately within the phase parameters. We call it freedom with fences within Aspen. We combined all of these with individual monthly catch-ups with every project and line manager to replay, review their data, which gave us a QA-light assurance type capability. We gradually improved our data accuracy, reliability, and vitally the trust of our stakeholders in the PMO. This meant we provided the necessary supporting infrastructure and services to ensure that the Aspen portfolio is being effectively managed and delivered. But most importantly, it set out a consistent baseline that would ultimately provide a very solid foundation for our digital transformation. So having done this, how do we operate in this analog environment? Well, we maintain spreadsheets and project plan, our inputs coming in from the project status reports, the regular check and challenge meetings, and external links such as project spend data from our finance team. Once we've made the process as efficient and clean as we possibly could, it was still very time consuming to obtain the data, check and collate it, update the central sheets, copy and paste key elements into PowerPoint, add a commentary, and then provide reports. We used around about the equivalent of a full-time role across the team doing this. We had regular but challenging SLAs for producing and publishing reports as we wanted to ensure that the content remained current by the time that we had published it. Any delay within the PMO risked our output becoming stale before it was out into the wider company. This also limited the window for us to add value with analysis and commentary and oversight. Our timesheet system was old, it was relatively inflexible. All joiners, movers and leavers needed PMO administration, but our biggest challenge was maintaining the task structures required for time booking, which also needed the PMO to administrate the input and changing of all of these tasks. Around about 50% of a full-time role was absorbed just in timesheet administration alone. Portfolio analysis and commentary required assessments across the various data sources. It was very difficult to run meaningful metrics to illustrate the portfolio performance. But most importantly, any requests for non-standard or new reports or urgent fire drill type requests from stakeholders were really difficult to respond to in a timely manner. I'm sure you're all familiar with these sorts of scenarios, and it's very difficult to run with that. Finally, our project managers spent a considerable amount of time just on pure project admin, maintaining a variety of reports, plans, RAID logs, stakeholder overviews, etc. So what were the triggers for moving to digital? Well, PMO effort, we were unable to grow volumes or services within the constraint of our team size. The project management effort, project managers were managing multiple projects. We needed to free up time for them to focus on managing the day-to-day project issues and deliverables rather than become pseudo-administrators. There was no real-time view of data. Key data elements were collected at points in time, but at different points in the monthly cycle. Therefore, there was never really a true snapshot of where we were at any single point in time. Data availability. Our manual reporting was often distributed via email or was housed on a very limited intranet site. Access and availability was constrained. The wider business environment at Aspen, business headcounts and cost challenges are commonplace. This meant we were unable to add to our teams or increase our PMO cost base. Expectations. The success we've had, though, in providing a greater level of insight to our executive committees, unfortunately, led to a high-quality problem in that they had a greater expectations and demand for more sophisticated and frequent reporting. So whilst we'd optimised our environment as far as we could in terms of internal efficiencies, data reporting coverage, our services and profile, we really had no bandwidth to develop our insight, analysis and commentary any further to adapt to the increasing executive expectations. We'd created little in the way of efficiencies for our project managers. Our data was a monthly snapshot, and in common with our wider transformation team, we were coming under increasing challenges from a cost and headcount perspective. The need for us to change was clear. So what was our route to digital and beyond? So, as I explained, our journey really started a couple of years before the formal project. Our foundations were laid across a number of lines, as I've illustrated, with multiple stops along that journey. The various lines have all come together in PPO, and we've continued to develop since. Could we have matured our services more quickly? Almost certainly yes. But we maintain the principle of plan, build, stabilise, then move on to ensure that we had a sustainable evolution of our service model. I'll now move on and give you some more detail around how we actually managed our transformation. So how do we approach the digital journey? Well, there's a myriad system options for PPM tools and many, many providers. If you were to Google PPM tools, you'll be there all day filtering out your results. So where would you start? Do you look at Gartner papers? You look at industry seminars? go through the internet, take recommendations from colleagues, personal experiences, probably a bit of all of them in reality. You know, recognising the size and maturity of our operation, it was highly unlikely we would need to go down one of the more expensive on-premise solutions. So that route was pretty quickly discounted, and I started to focus in on software as a service type of options. It took quite a while informally evaluating options and providers, probably around about a 12-month period, you know, looking for options that matched our maturity before formally engaging with any vendors. We looked at some of the larger upper quartile type providers. We looked at niche providers and also combinations of specialist solutions that could perhaps be pieced together to create something bespoke for us. What was critically important, however, was to find a solution that met some key criteria that we'd agreed at the outset. So the solution had to be simple to use with a very clear user interface. It had to be able to replace all of a project manager's required controls and enable them to manage their day. It had to be able to provide simple, easy to understand, out-of-the-box type reporting. It had to have an integrated time recording function. And commercially, we didn't want to be locked into an inflexible commercial model. It was also vitally important to us that we found a partner organisation that matched our ethos and who would be able to help both our transition and to embed the changes as they came along. We felt that a partner really must be able to understand our maturity, understand and articulate solutions to problems that were raised by the PMO and our project managers as we were to move forward, and be able to hold a sound credibility with our user base. So following an extensive review of our options, we shortlisted 3 PPM applications and held discovery and Q&A sessions with each of the providers before we whittled that down to a final 2 candidates. So, proving the concept. So following a mini RFP type engagement, we looked to arrange a proof of concept with each of our remaining candidates. We chose initially to work with PPO as throughout the process they demonstrated really great engagement with us and a great understanding of our issues, and they were able to provide us a clear plan for the next stage. You know, probably a lot of products and providers compete on features and functionality with their tools. And whilst ease of use and functionality were critical factors to us and our decision-making process, really for us, the USP of PPO was very much their implementation and partnering approach. And this, coupled with their very strong PMO experience and background, coming from being a broader PPM services provider rather than just a software company, really won through. The proof of concept with PPO was effectively run as a phase 1 implementation. This gave us a no regrets position should we choose to move forward post proof of concept. So what did we actually do with the proof of concept itself? Well, we selected a range of project types and project managers, so 5 different projects of different sizes and types. 5 different project managers ranging from outright PPM tool skeptics through those of a more relationship-driven or lighter administration bent, to those that were more likely to be proactive tool advocates. In fact, one of the project managers I selected had in the past given me a 45-minute sit-down discussion and a 15-point bullet point plan as to, you know, exactly why a tool set would never work for him. So that became a personal challenge to me, really. So, and I took the view of if I can replace what was in fact a very impressive, complex manual infrastructure that he'd created around one of the biggest projects that we have, then I reckoned that I could adopt any project or any project manager into it. We ran dual location. We have a big change operation in the US. Travel was never going to be a possibility within the constraints of our implementation. So we needed to test the training and adoption assumptions we'd made in terms of being able to do that via screen sharing. We ran full project take-on, we managed project delivery, and we aimed to complete 2 month-end reporting cycles with each of these projects. We started around the last week of May 2018, which enabled us to run the 2 cycles for the May and June month ends over the least period of elapsed time. Working directly with the PPO implementation partner, we built everything necessary to replace our manual environments for these projects. So what made the proof of concept successful ultimately? Clear expectations were set between the PMO and the project managers with a common understanding of what was going to be deemed as a success. The goodwill of our project managers, we chose not to enforce their analogue reports through the proof of concept in return for them fully embracing and volume testing the PPO solution. We had a clear plan and parameters that were agreed with PPO. We followed a detailed implementation plan very, very clearly. We dedicated a full week to data take-on, with the PMO team attending each session with each PM to gain both a detailed understanding of the toolset and an appreciation of the different challenges that came up in each session. Each project was built from scratch by the relevant PM with guidance from PPO. The key success point here was the experience and empathy of our PPO partner in understanding the challenges that the project managers faced and providing them with pragmatic solutions and explanations answering those issues as they came up. As we onboarded projects into PPO, we retired all of the project's associated manual reports and controls. So, why was it successful? Well, there was a genuine desire all round to make it a success. The take-on sessions gave each PM a detailed understanding of the solution and the key elements driving their reports. We kept the scope very simple, just the data and functions we needed.
Sorry to jump in here, Richard. I think your slides have got stuck somewhere. You need to just progress it on.
Okay. Thanks, Guy.
There you go.
So, yeah, we kept the scope very simple, just the data and functions needed to retire our existing reporting suite. We implemented no new functions at this point. And this was quite key, despite some excitement at the possibilities from the PMO and PMs alike at some of the potential uses for PPO going forward. So as a result of the confidence we gained during the proof of concept, we decided to avoid the effort of conducting a parallel or successive proof of concept with our second shortlisted vendor and continue the implementation with PPO outright. This avoided us having any loss of momentum in the implementation. It contained our internal costs, minimized rework, and it reduced the overhead on our proof of concept participants. So once we'd agreed with our sponsors to continue the implementation, we moved rapidly to extend PPO platform across the remainder of our 2018 portfolio of projects. What this actually meant, in fact, was that we had to load every project that had any impact in the 2018 financial year. So it became a slightly higher process than we'd initially expected. We chose not to enter any legacy projects that had concluded prior to the start of 2018. We took baselines of our analogue reports as reference points just in case, although at this stage we felt committed to moving forwards. The overall implementation focused on automated like-for-like functionality where appropriate, leveraging the capabilities of PPO to streamline the Aspen project processes and enhance our management information. So really trying to keep things as similar as we had expected before. We completed the not insignificant task of bulk data uploading to PPO, including the detailed project backgrounds for 60, 70 odd projects, constructing a resource pool of up to 200 people, loading all of the existing resource allocations. Our proof of concept project managers then went on and built out any further projects they were running, and we took each of our remaining project managers through the onboarding process for at least one of their projects. We enabled each project to run in PPO, and we offered them the opportunity of running parallel PPO manual reporting for up to 2 months whilst they familiarised themselves with the features and functions. Within the PMO, we looked to retain our analogue reports as a fallback based on the PPO data, but very rapidly found that this was an unnecessary overhead for us. We made sure to implement core functionality, leaving the new features for later. As each project was built and adopted, we looked to really make the life of the project manager easier. We retired their manual RAID logs, their financial spreadsheets, standalone project plans, and we provided the consistent format for their status and board reporting going forwards. We enabled automated change requests and decision logs into PPO. We moving their timesheet solution last in the process de-risked the overall implementation. We waited 2 months after implementing the initial project's controls and reporting. Reason for this, timesheet users were by far our largest group, and we wanted to avoid too much noise too early from a change management perspective. But this did allow us plenty of time to run drop-in training sessions with that large community of people, and also offer them a PPO cupcake as a reward for attending them. We also managed an enormous data migration exercise from our legacy timesheet solution, with every timesheet entry for every active project migrated to ensure that we were able to retain both an audit trail of time, but more importantly, a validation for all of our historical internal cost recharges. So the critical outcomes we were looking to achieve were we had to have a fully operational environment, all projects, all data, and all of our chosen reporting options. The PMO had to have the capacity to report across the portfolio at all levels. We had to do no damage. The data output needed to correlate with, the endpoints of our analog world. We had to prove that we reduced the admin burden on our project managers whilst maintaining or improving their controls around their projects. So what made the implementation successful? Well, leadership support. We had great support and belief from our management team to transition over to using the PPO data. They recognised there could be some challenges, but keeping 2 data sets going was only going to defocus both the project managers and the PMO teams. They trusted us to get it right without being overbearing, and that really paid off for us. The parallel running. So we had planned to run this phase for a 3-month period, but as I said before, within 6 weeks, we were able to run an entire reporting set using just PPO and could already see how successful that was going to be. We were able to make that decision to turn off the manual reporting much earlier than we'd originally planned. Our own controls and support. So we grew our support skills and the capacity for development and configuration of the system in-house. In fact, the data flows gave great context to one of our newer team members who came from a technology background, as it allowed him to envisage exactly how the portfolio and project processes worked and hung together. And this was a really great, if unexpected, consequence of moving to a digital environment. The communications. We ran weekly project team meetings. The weekly sessions we held with PPO were really useful and valuable for us to obtain guidance on the gaps and challenges they had seen, and also on best practice tips which helped our team to fix them. We provided regular all-staff updates via email. We had individual and group training sessions. And we evangelized at every opportunity, using marketing gimmicks such as, just carrying around PPO notebooks, pens, mugs throughout the process. The Cupcakes for Timesheet initiative was another great thing. Data completeness. One of the great features that PPO provides that I've not seen in other tool sets, to be honest, is detailed metrics on data completeness. So essentially, we were able to use these metrics to track the gaps in our data or in the understanding of our project managers and teams in using the tool set. This helps us in driving consistency of approach across our project portfolio. The support of our implementation partners. So the support we got from PPO was really first class. They used the experience and understanding of the value and challenges of onboarding the level of data and people that we had and use those as keys to the success of the implementation approach that we adopted. We organically built the capability of the team to manage and support PPO and its users through strong support of our implementation partners throughout that process. So lastly, we ran a user survey facilitated by PPO, who gathered all of the results and masked those for us. The overall feedback was very positive, with solid adoption and net positive scores across the majority of categories. 95% of our respondents confirming that PPO had been well adopted and is now used for all project management activity. We looked into areas where we could have perhaps done better, and we used those to inform our future development and training plans. So, for example, integrating document artifact properties to eliminate standalone templates and artifacts, and the need to then copy and paste between systems. And of course, really, fantastic commitment from my project team within the PMO. So just reviewing back some key principles. I'd like to just really run a quote from my South African friends. We very much ate our vegetables. So we ran our implementation project on PPO. We used that as the first full project. It included our plan, it included our status reports, issues, risks, actions. We used it to facilitate our weekly team update meetings, and this gave us, a great understanding of how individual project teams would need to utilize the tool and smoothed out some rough edges for us. The weekly update sessions were key to us maintaining our focus, our momentum, and resolving the issues that we encountered. Change management was absolutely crucial. We identified early on that every stakeholder would have a different learning curve and approach. We tailored our change management approach to their individual needs. The proof of concept approach, by selecting a mix of project types and running end-to-end through the process and not just involving team project managers, we stress tested both our approach and our thinking. And in return for that, we received really valuable input back from our participants. Implement incrementally. Take your core basic functions, prove it works, then add, say, one per month. Communicate, communicate, communicate. You can never give people too much background throughout what is, a fundamental change in the way that they work on a day-to-day basis, particularly for the project managers. Listen to suggestions. Some of these will be good and useful to implement right now. Others, sit them on a parking lot, come back to them. Always look for iterative improvements. We've seen month-on-month improvements in data quality, enhanced decision-making. We're sequencing our projects better as an organisation. Maintain your communications and your profile. We've continued to use PPO updates as new features are released. We talk PPO in all of our stakeholder interactions. And overall, I'd say choose your partners wisely. The collaboration with PPO drove and continues to drive, real value to our organisation. So I'm going to hand the floor to Guy, who's just going to give you a detailed view from the PPO perspective of the approach that we used through our initial implementation period.
Thank you, Richard. I'm just going to run through this fairly quickly because I'm scared we may run out of time and there might be a couple of questions. I think one of the key things that Richard and the team did was they were very brave when they decided to implement PPO and digitalizing everything. So Richard is, I think, not saying as good a job as he actually did, but post the implementation of the journey that he went on, they don't have a single piece of paper anymore in the business, whether that's a business case or a project status report or a portfolio report or a project closure certificate or a milestone certificate. All of those artifacts have all been digitized. So they really went in full hog with the solution and made sure, obviously, that they got the benefit of it. And I think a lot of the organizations that are using PPO and other tools start doing bits and pieces of it, but never really go the full distance. So the number one question people always ask me when I tell them about what the work that was done at Aspen is, yeah, but that must have taken years to do. But actually, it didn't actually take that very long. So this was the timeline. We kicked off early May. We did the kickoff on the requirements, and we did the system configuration within the first month. That's a PPO standard that we try not to configure and customize the solution. We have a lot of pre-built configurations. And as Richard said, and I think it's key to the learnings, we replicated what was existing in the environment without using new features and functionality that PPO had, that Richard and the team hadn't built into their governance and their frameworks and their methodology. So they didn't take the opportunity to now introduce new stuff because they saw the functionality in PPO. And then we tried an approach where we said, we're going to deliver a release every month. So while the entire system was ready to go and built, we deployed it on a monthly release. And that was to support the change management. That was to support the adoption in such a way that the team could adopt it, and more importantly, they could retire the elements they needed to. So it was a conscious decision to put the employee list into the system, put the portfolio list into the system from a project point of view, and the 1st of June, delete the portfolio spreadsheet. And it was tough to look the guys in the eyes and see them actually do it, but we forced that discipline all the way through the process. Got all the schedules and project plans, and some of the people using Excel, some of them using Agile tools, some of them using Microsoft Project, embedded into PPO, and had the task management functionality. Moved all the costing spreadsheets, forecast spreadsheets, budget spreadsheets into the system early July, and delivered the first set of status reports mid-July, and the first full portfolio report early August. And subsequent to that, Richard has been doing all portfolio reporting for all change boards, all mancos, all delivery boards, all excos directly off the system. We gave ourselves a summer off, a European summer off, and then launched into some of the outputs that the project managers were doing manually with Word templates, milestone certificates, closure reports, those type of artifacts. As Richard alluded to, 3 months after the July date, we launched the timesheets on the 1st of October and moved over, I can't remember at the time, but it was close to 200 users doing timesheets. Having the timesheet data moved us into the resource allocation early November, so all resource allocation of those 200 resources, where they're planned, where they're allocated, where the capacity sits. Moving into full RAID log, retiring end of November, and then closing out the project mid-December. So it didn't take a lot of time, but it was a very structured, organized, planned approach to do specific things at specific times, retire them as and how we went. And I think Richard alluded to it in terms of the weekly progress meetings, but the progress meetings were more Q&A sessions. So we had 2-hour Q&A sessions on a weekly basis where project managers, team members, PMO people, executives, anybody in the organization could dial into them and join them. And we addressed a lot of the change management through that. So it was a constant, ongoing, give us your feedback, give us your input, give us your concerns. And we educated, we played back, we educated, we fixed, we addressed all the way through. And that continued all the way through December. And it's something that we are doing with all our existing clients on an ongoing basis. So we still do that with Aspen today, not as frequently, but we still have those Q&A sessions to enable them to maximize the use of the functionality. So that's the timeline for those of you that are interested. And I think, Richard, I can hand it back to you now.
Thanks, guys. So, we talked at the outset about recovering our time. So how have we done that? So, historically, we had more than 60 PowerPoint reports. They were received, we had to review them. Manual consolidation took, 2 resources, 2 or 3 days a month to complete. Since we moved to PPO, I reckon we've saved, half to 3/4 of the equivalent of a full-time EPMO employee spent on report production and administration. We've also seen great efficiencies in the project management teams, probably around 10 to 15% per person, which has enabled them to have a greater focus on the delivery of their projects and managing their stakeholders. So combining with the EPMO time savings, this brings us to a tally of people-related savings up to around the equivalent of 3 full-time people per month, enabling us to handle a higher volume of concurrent projects whilst maintaining our delivery controls and governance processes. On the intangible side of things, the enhancements in the data quality, the timeliness, the availability, this has really enabled a step change in the oversight of Aspen's portfolio. We're able to publish month-end snapshots significantly earlier with far greater depth of insight analysis provided to our teams. They in turn are now able to self-serve in real time. Our project teams have a one-stop shop for all of their needs throughout the delivery cycle. And all these factors combined really placed in sharper focus in the executive forums. We've improved the decision making, such as better sequencing of projects, which is leading to enhanced throughput and improving the return on investment from our change portfolio in Aspen. So moving on, as Guy alluded to, we've not stood still, and we maintain our partnership approach with PPO, although we're now moving more towards a consultancy model. We still hold our regular catch-up meetings to discuss progress. We seek advice, best practice benchmarking. We've developed a very strong in-house capability for PPO support and development, and we're now able to support deployments ourselves of new features and functionalities on average, maybe releasing once a month or so. We've also engaged on a formal phase 2 project, which is completing that thought to finish life cycle. It's enabled us to capture new business ideas before they become formal projects, ensuring the alignment of our projects through business strategies and adding a benefits management module. We've automated our remaining project artifacts, as Guy alluded to earlier. We're further developing our life cycle and branding. We're creating bespoke control metrics and KPIs to better track the performance of our portfolio and hone in on any particular problem areas that we see. We've maintained the communications profile with every release being supported by bespoke communications. So I suppose to summarise and just to leave you with key critical takeaway points. Don't try to use PPM and PPM implementation to drive process change. Get the processes right, then automate them. Have target outcomes in mind and visualize throughout your analog environment before you move to digital. Avoid major changes to your reporting content frequency and format during your implementation. Having stable environment, that helps your delivery team's adoption. It ensures you've got comparable data sets, reduces the risk of the tool rejection, and makes adoption much easier for senior executives. Enable your project managers. You need to really make their lives as easy as possible. Your project managers are your golden egg of data. The easier the user interface and the process is for them, the better. Get the project levels right and the PMO will get everything that it needs to set up for its reporting and oversight and control of the portfolio. Get your value chain stakeholders on board. Make sure that your up and downstream impacts, such as on your finance teams, are well understood. Remain focused on your target outcomes. Avoid getting sidetracked by features and functionalities that are not core to your implementation. Look for iterative improvements and regular future deployments of added value rather than going too far too soon. Never say or allow anyone else to call your solution a PMO tool. That's almost a sackable offence within our team. It's there to enable your overall change environment and delivery. Focus heavily on your change management. This will need more time than the implementation planning or the data take on. Remember, a fully populated system does not equal completion. A fully utilised one does. Maintain ongoing communications and keep your solution profile high. So that effectively covers our journey. I really hope you found something interesting, something relevant and useful to your individual environments. I'm happy to cover off any questions that you have. I think Taryn's been having a look and kept a note of some good questions as we've been moving on. So,
brilliant, thank you. This is Lindsay again. I'm going to put in some questions to you. You have had some questions coming in, and no doubt people are going to be listening to this. There's so much stuff in there, and just to reiterate, we will be you will get the presentations and stuff to pour over because there's so much in there. And I love the bit at the end about the sackable offence. Brilliant, Richard. Okay, so first question I've got is actually for you, Richard. So you've digitalised through a PPM tool implementation. Do you think you can digitalise without a PPM tool?
Thanks, Liz. Yes, so that's a good question. So yes, in short, but then why would you? So I think the PMO is really in the business of enabling delivery. You're not in the business of software development. So, if you could, of course, build your own bespoke solution using things like SharePoint and some funky macros and those sorts of things. But, you're going to get yourself caught up into a world of database administration, complex development. You're going to add, costs, complexities to your environment. There's such a big range of options and commercially viable supported solutions out there. There must be something that would be just right for your organization rather than thinking, I'll build something from the ground up.
I agree. Which kind of leads on to the other question. I mean, it's brilliant stuff that your PMO team have managed to do and running that project. How what was the impact on that PMO team of actually having to do that project? As well as the business as usual for them, which is doing the job of PMO.
Yeah, that's so again a good question. Thanks for putting me on the spot. So we deliberately ran this as a project. So we recognised in advance that it would be a huge amount of effort for us. So we planned to strip down the service model as much as we could, and we put dedicated time for the implementation period into our plan. We had the key steps that were helped along the way in terms of, formatting our data for data take-on. Fortunately, what we had done in advance in having a pretty good data sheet type of view of all of our data made that take on quite a lot easier than I guess it would have been. So we set it as a project. We maintained focus on the key tasks, and we made sure that we were delivering to those periods, having allocated our time up in advance. But yeah, it was a big effort. The incentive was immediately there because we could see the potential to remove the analog solutions that we've got, and that was freeing up such a lot of time for us from what in a lot of cases was pretty mundane stuff in terms of capturing, copying, pasting, moving stuff around.
Okay, great.
Lindsay, I think that was one of the keys on why we went with the monthly iterations, because we knew that we needed to get time of the PMO, but then give it back immediately. We couldn't just get time for 6 months or 8 months and say to them, well, in 8 months' time, your life will be significantly different. So as we went through the retiring of those specific things, and the planning and the sequencing was so important, they won back each component. Richard also cleverly made sure that the project was managed from our side so that we could hold the PMO accountable, because obviously that's difficult for them to do their day job and then implement this tool on the side and then have to project manage that themselves. So that I think also helped where it was project managed outside of the PMO.
I mean, what's obvious from the presentation is just how much change management has gone into making this a success, which, we know that it's the people side of stuff that is always the most difficult. But a question really for both of you, really. One of the things that we found a lot in the PMO at the moment is that a lot of PMOs are having to support and report and look at the governance side of kind of like hybrid. So some of their projects are waterfall delivered, some of them are more agile. How does that work with something like this? Are you having to do that yourself, Richard, where you are?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, and I think the whole agile debate, I guess, is I'm not going to cover that in the next 2 minutes. So, in reality, within our environment, our business is not really set up to work in an agile, end-to-end, product-aligned fashion. So, a lot of our projects will start in a waterfall stage, and they'll move through some sort of traditional analysis, gain funding. There'll be a little bit signed off. We'll then quite often move into more of an agile delivery fashion. And then, you know, rightly, our IT team are very protective of the live environment. So we'll often then slow towards a controlled release and closure phase of our project. So we'll often run agile through that delivery period where it's appropriate, and that's running very effectively. So it tends to be through there. We will keep track on releases as key milestones within those periods. So, you know, if we're running an iteration or we're running multiple releases, we'll track those as key milestones within the project plan, rather than having your traditional, you know, requirements, build, test, etc. So it's just a different emphasis on our milestones.
Okay, so we've just had another question in about embarking on this journey. What internal prerequisites would you suggest I have in place? I think this goes back to the bit about making sure that your processes and things are in a good place before you embark. Anything else that we need to be considering?
I think you have to understand why you're starting. So are you making life easier for you, or are you making life easier for everybody? And once you've recognized that it's got to be the latter, then I think that puts you on a very sound footing. If you're in a situation where your organization is struggling to recognize a project from BAU activity, I would suggest you probably need a little bit of maturity before you go with automation. So, you know, we moved up from, you know, I guess a level 1 to a level 2 type of maturity level before we ever looked at to move towards a toolset environment. And the reason for that is you just have to have an element of control, an element of governance, and an element of consistency around your processes before you can hope to move it. That's why we had a bit of a failure on the first implementation. It was a too much, too soon, trying to drag people forward rather than lead them forward.
Yeah, excellent. And if anybody's interested, the previous webinar that we did actually looked at that about maturity around the PMO before you can start to make a journey, like you've just been listening from Richard. Just to
Lindsay, one more thing I just want to add in there, which I think is imperative. I mean, it's one of the things we look for when we do a pre-readiness assessment to see, is a client ready? We get a lot of people that phone us and say, I'm not sure if I'm ready for a tool, but come and do a readiness assessment. But having a reporting heartbeat is crucial. So Richard already had project managers doing weekly, every 2 weeks, every monthly status meetings with steering committees, and they had specific reporting templates they were using. And there were 3 or 4 management committees, ExCos and boards that were getting portfolio reporting. All of that was in place. It was working. It was very manual for Isabel and Josh and Richard. They spent hours doing it, but it was all in place. So enabling that through the digitalization of the technology was actually very easy. We didn't have to go and try and create that reporting heartbeat and try and understand what data they want and what format they needed and how frequently they want it. We replaced the existing heartbeat, and that heartbeat was so crucial to making sure that the sustainability was there and the adoption was quick, because they immediately saw the benefit of moving from doing it all manually to digitally.
Okay, great. That's we're coming to the end of the webinar. I'll let you both close up.
Okay, so I'll just finish from my side by thanking everyone from around the globe for sparing time today and dialing in. I hope you found something interesting. I will hand over to Guy just for final comments.
Richard, thank you very much. Lindsay, thank you for hosting this and for promoting it with your flash mob audience. Richard, thank you for your time and effort and sharing your journey. It was probably one of the favorite projects I've worked on in the last 10 years, and I felt it was a journey that needed to be told. I think you had all your ducks in a row. I know a lot of your team is on the call. I know Alison is there. I think Joe is there. I'm sure Isabel and Josh are there, and I think to all of them, they did a great job. And if there are any questions that we haven't answered, you're more than welcome to send either Richard or myself an email. If Richard just pings over to the next one, you can LinkedIn as well. Me on LinkedIn, there's my email address as well, and Richard's. We're more than welcome to answer. If you're not sure whether you're ready for a digital journey, reach out to Richard, have a chat. I'm happy to help you as well. As Richard said, our focus is more than just implementing a tool set. It's enabling the strategic portfolio and delivery of that. And we often help clients get ready for a tool and then launch on a tool journey. But thank you, Richard, for sharing your story with us and your journey. And thank you, Lindsay, for you. And to my team, Taryn, specifically for all the work you've put in the last week or so. And to all the PPO clients that have joined, I see a lot of names here of people that I recognize. Thank you. Hopefully you're getting the benefit out of PPO that Richard is, and if you're not, you're more than welcome to reach out to myself or Lindy or Taryn or Deleon or anyone of the team. Get us into your office and let's see how we can help you get some of the benefits that Richard and his team is getting. So thank you very much, everyone. Richard, thank you for the journey. I know that pushed you hard to get through the presentation and do all your prep and stuff, but thank you for sharing your journey. I think it's important. I think it's a great story. So thank you, everybody, for joining. We'll stick around for a couple of minutes for those that do have additional questions. Those that need to leave, you're more than welcome to leave. But thank you everybody for joining. And as said before, we'll share this presentation with you all shortly so that you've got it as reference as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Guy.
Pleasure, Sean. Thanks for joining us.
Questions that you want to answer? There's a couple more that have come in.
I'm just going through the questions on the side here. I don't think there's any questions we've left. I know there's one or two.
Quite like the one that just came in right near the end, which was, do you believe this implementation improved your PM maturity level?
Was that PM's maturity levels?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Do you believe this implementation improved your PM maturity level? It's a question from Leonard. I think he's dialed off for no, he's still on the call. Leonard is still on the call. So Richard, maybe there's one for you to take.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, to be fair. And yeah, I'd like to know how many of our PMs are on the call before I answer it. So I think in a number of cases, you end up with really good PMs who know exactly what they're doing, and having the tool set running consistently makes their life a lot easier. That having been said, you end up with a lot of people who haven't run many projects, and you also end up with people who become, that they inherit a project and are running it for no other reason than it was given to them. And having a structure and a solution that enables you to maintain that in a simple way and a consistent way, I think is driving up the average maturity level of the project management pool, simply by taking those with less experience and less maturity in project management forward more quickly.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'd like to bend your ear a bit about the bit that you talked about when moving on, when you're moving more towards a consultancy model. Maybe I'll get you on the next flash mob. You can have a beer and you can tell me more about that. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, well, super presentation. Thank you very much. And I don't know if anybody else is still listening here or if they dropped off or what, but thanks for that. I know it wasn't easy at the beginning, but you carried on like a pro.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good. It's a good experience, and appreciate the opportunity.
We're not done with you yet. I think there's more to be had from Richard's brain, I think.
I told Richard last week when I was in the UK, I said, I'm sure Lindsay's lining you up to speak at her conference because your story is good. You've done all the hard work. You've got the benefit. A lot of organizations approach the tool journey, do bits and pieces, don't really pull, do it end to end, don't deal with the change well, don't do all of that stuff and get half benefits. So I said to Richard, I can see you road showing this thing all over the show because you've done what I've seen very few organizations be able to achieve end to end in such a short period of time. Obviously, a lot of prep work and setup done over the 3 years before the PPO portion. But yeah. Richard, I look forward to attending your 2020 PMO conference.
Yes,
case study in the big auditorium on the first day with hundreds of cheering people.
In the broom cupboard underground, facilitated by Ken.
No, they'll put you in the front. They'll put you in the front room just after the keynote speaker, just to keep the room full.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Taryn, are you comfortable? Are you ready to close this out? Anything else you need us to do?
Good, thank you. I think we still had about 19 people online. I'm not sure if all good, but I'm happy that if there hasn't been any other questions last 5 minutes, I'm good to go.
Okay, cool, excellent. All right, see you later, chaps. Great session.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Thanks, Taryn. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Ever so
Thanks,
much.
Richard.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.